Good morning. Okay.
Good morning.
I think we're going to go ahead and get started. We can jump around on the agenda a little bit if Caesar isn't in the building yet. I know he is parking, so we can do that. But I thought we would go ahead and call the meeting to order and do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I do want to wish everyone a safe and healthy and happy holiday season. This week is D-Day, I guess. Get it done. So anyway, but we're happy everybody's here today for our Legislative and Strategic Planning Committee meeting. Their minutes are in your packet. Ask if everybody has reviewed those and if I can get a motion to approve them.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Like sign opposed, show that passed. And is there any public comment? No one? Is there anyone from the audience wishing to speak?
A point of order before I proceed, Madam Chair. I spoke with Commissioner Miller, and Mr. Merman is here, late yesterday evening, and he sent his regrets. He is taking his wife to a regularly scheduled appointment this morning, nothing emergency, but it was a late addition to his schedule, so he is not able to attend the committee meeting, and he sends his regrets.
Okay, thank you very much. And also his wife has been in the hospital, so we wish her a speedy recovery on Les Miller's wife.
Okay.
And so we hope that she is getting better. Okay, Caesar is not here yet, so why don't we move to item 2B? Catherine, since you are here, and
Yes,
you can
ma'am.
lead the discussion on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A brief bit of background. On October 31st, HART and PSTA had a joint meeting of our executive committees. At that meeting, Commissioner Janet Long from Pinellas County made a presentation on an idea, a concept she was bringing forward for a regional council of governments. In this arena, it was germane to discuss regional implications for transportation. Highlights from that included a proposal for HART and PSTA to clarify their interaction in an interlocal. Since that is not a statutory body, both boards brought those recommendations and discussion to their respective board meetings. November 7th, our board met and Commissioner Merman raised the issue of HART and Pinellas entering into an interlocal agreement under new business. And I was reviewing the minutes from that meeting last night, so highlighting on that. The motion that passed was to direct staff to work on an interlocal agreement, bring an agreement to HART Legislative and Strategic Planning Committee for review and recommendation. But just going through the highlights of that conversation, Director Giroux had noted the board had not discussed the Council of Government presentation, suggested further discussion on areas where we could work together. And Commissioner Merman, you reiterated your motion was not for regionalized government, but continued cooperation and making sure that this cooperation was in front of the legislature. So there was a very strong sense of what the agencies were doing together. Councilman Suarez clarified the motion would discuss the 6 items which had been listed in the presentation for further review and discussion. And then Commissioner Giroux, Director Giroux, I'm so sorry, had asked about the difference between an interlocal or why an agreement would be required since HART and PSTA work together. Commissioner Merman again stressed this would be getting in front of the legislature. Commissioner Giroux asked, again, Director Giroux, I keep calling you Commissioner, asked if we would bring back a recommendation on an interlocal or different agreements for the board to discuss. And that is where the conversation was. So staff had gone back through the October meeting, the November meeting, grabbed the content and pulled it together for a very preliminary review and consideration. This came out to our committee members on Friday. We also have been discussing it with our peers in Pinellas, but sent them text on Friday because we're trying to balance. Clearly this board needs to steer the conversation, but we need to be working hand in hand with our friends in Pinellas. So it's a very rough conversation. It is here. It's about a month and a half after the board meeting. This is the last scheduled meeting of the Legislative and Strategic Planning Committee. So if the direction is to bring it to conversation of this committee, this is an opportunity, and then we can schedule a follow-on committee for the next steps, and then referral up to the board at the convenience of this committee. And that is what I have to turn it over for discussion.
Okay, thank you very much for that presentation. Are there questions by members?
Yeah.
Yes. Director George.
Yeah, I think it's clear that I have grave reservations about doing an interlocal agreement. As Catherine stated, I think what Suarez said, and I think what you had even mentioned in the October 31st meeting, is that we would want to go through a rigorous study process before we embark into anything like this. And I think Suarez's comments were, we could study these 6 areas. And so I was a little surprised that we actually came to this meeting with a full-up agreement without, really going into some of the issues behind that. I think if we do an interlocal agreement, this is a contract. This is binding. And when I look at the language, it's very subjective. It's saying that we are going to look into IT and maybe we're going to agree to coordinate one other area. So I don't think that's rigorous study that we've taken a lot of time to look into. What are the deliverables? What if there's disputes to be resolved? How do we back out if there are disputes? These are very subjective language. So I really put a lot of caution in going through an agreement of this formal nature without having vetted it a little bit further. And I would like to go back a little bit, since this is a committee where we do have time to discuss and really vet the issues. At the executive meeting, it was put forward, postulated that the reason that we needed to, that there was a problem, that we needed to coordinate better as a region. And I do agree with what she started off with, is that there are too many committees, there's too many studies, nothing gets done. I think we all can agree to that sentiment. But part of this was saying that if we collapse and combine into this big region, we'll have a better opportunity to leverage funds. I contend that that there are a lot of reasons why this is not going to work, and there is a rule, I think, at the feds that is looking to come down to kind of force these mergers of the MPOs. I don't know if that rule has been finalized yet, but I think the incoming administration would probably have some issues with that. And I took the liberty to print off what the Florida Metropolitan Planning Organization Advisory Council came up with in response to that rule. Because again, I think this rule is what's driving a lot of this conversation. And this MPOAC is a representative. We have 26 or 27 MPOs in the state of Florida, and they have this organization where we have a representative, Les Miller is our representative on this committee. And they put out a letter, and I just want to read you some excerpts of this. And this is to Secretary Fox at the FTA, and it says, and I can give you links later. I highlighted some things I want to read. We do not believe the proposed rules will result in improved planning decisions or more efficient processes. Rather, we believe that the one-size-fits-all approach of the proposed rules will make transportation planning less accessible to the general public by increasing MPO's size and scope. This would also mute the voice of locally elected officials in the metropolitan planning process and undermine the original purpose for the creation of the MPOs, which was to provide for local input in transportation decision-making. We therefore stand strongly in opposition to the proposed MPO coordination and planning area reform rules and respectfully request that they be withdrawn without further action. Our primary concerns are the lack of clearly defined evidence-based problem with existing MPO coordination efforts and a cookie-cutter solution, which would be extremely difficult, if not impossible, to enact in Florida without creating nonsensical MPA boundaries. And it goes on, none of those perceived problems or proposed cures are supported by the objective research findings. The problem of poor coordination between existing MPOs and the necessity to right-size planning geography has not been subject of conference panels, research papers, peer-to-peer exchanges, or any typical mechanisms used by federal agencies to highlight and resolve issues they see in planning practice, giving the proposed rule an out-of-the-blue quality. I mean, it goes on and on. This is just the first page of about 8 pages. It goes on to talk that there's lack of authority in law. There is nothing I'll read it. We cannot find requirement in federal law stating that neighboring MPOs sharing an urbanized boundary, UZA, need to produce joint documents. In that case, we believe that the definition is being written to achieve a goal that is beyond the original intent of Congress. We therefore contend it is an act of administrative overreach and potentially is not a legal action by DOT. And my point to all this is that at that October meeting, it was talked about this election matters. Well, we've had the election, and we know that the incoming administration is going to be looking at these rules, especially the rules that might be finalized in the last hours of the administration. And they're looking for things that are, going further than what the law makes. It talks about complications of state open government laws. Florida has a strong and specific open government law that require the vast majority of transportation planning discussions and decisions to be made during noticed meetings. As written, the proposed rule would greatly complicate the coordinating decision-making process across political boundaries in states with strong open government laws by requiring MPO planning process to cover increasingly large areas. This would be particularly true for transit agencies that are currently covered by different MPOs but would be covered by the same MPO under the proposed rule, dramatically limiting their ability to communicate with decision makers outside. So we have a lot of unintended consequences. Then it talks about what I like to call the pyramid of power. You're getting larger MPOs will not necessarily create better planning, and they go into that. I could go on. They say there's factual statements in here that need verification. They don't define what a region is. It says 2 years' time isn't enough. And in this one I like, it says you're basically having the census dictate your MPO boundary. It says it's important to note that the U.S. Census Bureau creates their data and urbanized area boundaries without regards to needs and uses of the transportation community. Therefore, the results of census policies may have significant unintended impacts on transportation decision making. And it goes on. I could go on and on. This is a document from the Florida MPOs. These are our local representatives for each of the 26 regions. So, this is news to me. I wonder those that are on the MPO had ever, heard of this. Then we've got the state of Florida. This is from Boxhold. He wrote a letter to Carolyn Flowers, the acting administrator of the FTA, and he's talking about this rulemaking should be suspended until legislation is enacted that clarifies the congressional intent. He goes on, and he says, look, we've been doing it voluntary, and he uses as his examples the coordinating chairs where our region has been coordinating. So I say all this to say that I think the original premise that we need to do this because this is a mandate coming down for the feds, it's going to increase our opportunities for funding, I don't agree with that. And I think was very well demonstrated when we did act as a region, when we did go up for the Tiger Grant, when we got every letter from every congressman in the region, the 2 regions, the multi-county region, we got every county commission, we got every municipality to sign on. We did everything we could to show that we were acting as a region, looking for this grant for the money for the fare box. And in the end, we were rejected, and it was a political decision. So, I really hate to lose the sense of control, the local control, for maybe, unfounded reasons. And then secondly, in order to get state money, I think a lot of this is, unfortunately, it's designed to show a certain senator that we are working together. We are working together. We don't need an interlocal agreement to show that. I think you can see it in our work product. I think the last 4 years there's been a lot of collaboration. The fare box, we're doing things, we're sharing ideas, we're having the joint meetings. And I don't know in the end if one senator is going to be able to force us to get money or to keep us to get money. If you look at what's coming down in the House of Representatives, the Florida House, they are looking to do some reforms that are going to keep that, building up that concentration of power in just a few individuals. And so I think that's something else that we need to be cognizant as we move forward, that, we need to not placate. We need to do what's best for HART. We need to do best what's transit and not worry about one or two powerful senators who I don't think, has the power that some people may think that he has. And I'll leave it at that. So I'll just stop there.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? I can make a few.
Why don't you go first?
First of all, this is a regional transit authority. It's not the MPO, so it's kind of apples and oranges. And to correlate MPO to what we're trying to do here with HART, I think is probably a little bit of a stretch. But I do appreciate your comments, and I know you do so much good research.
Thank you.
You really do. She gets down to the nitty gritty. I read through this. I thought it was very, very specific. Did not reach out and say that in the future we're going to do this. It just, I look at the words like strategic coordination plan, that we will research the following 6 areas for further collaborative opportunities. Both authorities commit that they have improved regional cooperation. So I'm going specific to the agreement that I feel is very, very, outlined. I think staff did a very good job in getting it as narrow as possible. And I guess I'm going to ask our attorney, David, tell me about the binding nature of this interlocal agreement and, what it means for the future.
Well, an interlocal agreement is a contract, and it is binding in accordance with its terms. One of the things that I think we should look at, every contract, in my opinion, ought to have a termination provision that indicates that the parties can terminate on a variety of different bases. Typically, when it's a cooperative or joint venture of this nature, it's often terminable upon 30 days' notice without cause. So that's one thing to think about in case it goes in the wrong direction. It doesn't take anything away from the desire to cooperate, but it does give you some opportunities if it starts going in the wrong direction. I sent a series of comments. I don't see that they're incorporated in here, and I didn't bring my comments with me, so I don't. But I thought it needed to be a little more flexible in terms of some of the goals you're trying to accomplish. I didn't want it to be a commitment, because I don't think the decision has been made to make a commitment. The decision, I think, was made to pursue the areas in which cooperation might be fruitful. And that's why I think to Ms. Jarocha's point, I think that would be part of the process, is what are the areas where it would be fruitful. And I think you've got some of that language in here where staff will evaluate and study certain things. So anyway, the point is the contract is binding. We need to make sure the terms that we use are terms we can agree with, and that we're not locked into something we're not in favor of.
Okay, so for instance, it says in Section 5, both authorities commit. You would rather say both authorities will pursue.
Yeah, I think some of my language is what I call weasel words. I shouldn't say that in public, but both authorities will endeavor to develop. Both authorities agree to cooperate to try to, a little bit more generalized in its scope, because we don't know what the specifics are yet.
And to put a termination clause in here.
I think
we should have one.
Yes, and absolutely. I don't think that was the comment I made. In fairness to the staff, I didn't send that when I sent my comments, but I do think it's something we should add. I was also a little bit, the maintenance of records language was a little concerning.
Yeah, I didn't understand the maintenance of records language either. So why don't you tell me your thoughts?
I don't understand why it's even in here. We're both public agencies. We both have obligations to maintain records pursuant to 119. And it also was parlayed with an audit ability. And I don't know why we need that. We're a public entity. You come look at our records. They're available for you to look at. You want to come look at something, come on over. So it gave it a little bit of a aggressive, if not adversarial character that I don't think is appropriate.
Can I? One other question. I noticed in section 4 we talk about merging of IT systems, and that's a little concerning to me also.
And again, this was just a first draft where we're.
This is a first draft. I mean, we are discussing, something that's a work in progress.
Well, and to the point on the merge, I'm sure we're not unique. Of course, every industry thinks that they are, but there are systems which we have that have 5 to 10 year lives. For instance, the automated vehicle location system, which we have on our buses, will replace in 2019, and that will be a significant long-term purchase. Pinellas is using a different vendor, so we're looking for ways to say we'll be doing business together within the confines of what makes sense and what is actually doable, and that also includes editing the language for this. We could want to combine and turn into one IT place. We'd still be supporting different technologies for potentially up to a decade on some of these initiatives. So we will find some other language that David would recommend, though I won't say it's weasel words.
I think this is where I'm kind of at on this, is that since this is our first, is that we will take all the comments in, and we'll come back at the next meeting with a revised draft, because I don't think, given all the comments have been made, we're not ready to take it to the board for discussion. Director Jacobs, do you have any other comments?
I do. I kind of agree with both viewpoints on this. I certainly think with our general counsel's comments on, really easing the language a little bit, I think some of the language is very specific. The thing that that struck me the most, that I thought we needed to really take a look at, was section 4A and 4B, but 4A in terms of, develop a strategic coordination. I think that's important, but it says in the last phrase, the combined plan will be adopted by June 30, 2017. That certainly needs to be stricken in my mind. And 4B, I think, needs to be stricken too. I just don't think we have to mandate that these things have to happen. I think it's important to discuss it. I think it's important to work together to look at the best ways to serve the region from both of our organizations, which I think is important, because the connectivity, I think, will only benefit us, not just from a transportation standpoint, but certainly as we move on from land use and obviously the population growth that's being projected for our communities over the next 15 or 20 years is something we have to be very cognizant of. So I just think the language needs to be really looked at, and anything that gives us a mandate to adopt something by a certain date, we need to really look at very hard and strike that and decide what it is our true goals are of this. Absolutely.
I mean, these are big steps, and so you just can't, send a document out that, I think these comments, everybody's comments are really well taken. Just one second. And I think what I would like to see is just that this, Catherine, you work with David on revised language. I would also like to see the comments from the PSTA Legislative Committee, or whatever committee they have over there, what their comments were, so that we're not operating in isolation. But I think, to have something like this move forward, we need to walk carefully, and I'm very much in favor of doing something, but it has to be the right thing, and so that we can move forward. Director,
to that point, maybe I could ask our counsel, you say that this is binding. How about a memorandum of understanding? What are the differences there? Is that more like a gentleman's agreement?
Well, it depends on the language. And MOU, if you provide binding language, can be binding as well. So I think my point, when I went through, and my changes were all geared towards, better way to phrase it, adding flexibility. Because I don't know that this board has made a decision. This committee, and certainly the board, has made a precise decision. So I don't want to tie you into precise policies.
Right.
I think it's important to want to talk and work together, and an interlocal agreement that does that is advisable, because if you're moving in that direction, because it moves you to the next step, but it doesn't really commit you to specific policies yet, and I don't think it should. You're not there yet.
Well,
Well-
and her point, I think memorandum of understanding, why don't you also research that
Okay.
as maybe another tool to use?
And since it seems like we're moving more, and there are areas in IT where there is collaboration, maybe we could have a presentation on what that might look like at our next meeting. I know we had an agreement with T-BARDA to do a lot of our regional fare box. We were going to integrate the one call, one click. We were going to use their web platform. How does that change? Because we do have, I believe, an interlocal agreement with them. They were going to provide us funding for that. So those types of issues, what are the deliverables? How are the costs allocated? If we do go into this, I'd love to see that before we, commit to anything a little bit more formalized. How do we back out? How are disputes resolved? I think if we could get a presentation on just the IT aspect of that alone, I think that would be a good start.
Okay, so you got good comments, and
And may I ask one question,
please,
if I
Dr.
may?
Jacob.
Madam Chair, would it be okay for us to offer any comments and edits to this?
Absolutely.
To the committee, and maybe
Please.
send them
Phil,
through to...
I want you all to do that. But I do still want to make the point that we are moving to regional cooperation. And that is going to be the theme in the Tampa Bay area, I think, moving forward in the future with everything. Transit, look, we have Tampa Bay Water. For all the points that were brought up about the MPOs, look at Tampa Bay Water. They're a great example of something that really works. It takes the right leadership and it takes the right agreement. It took the legislature, 2 years to hammer out that agreement, 1996. So, there's a way to really get this done in a very proactive way that protects HART, protects PSTA, and helps us move forward. And that's really my goal. I, as a sitting board member, chair of this committee, I don't want to do anything that would bind us into something that we can get out of if we need to. So, okay, so you have firm direction?
Yes, ma'am. So we will collect comment. We will put it together in a way that it can be shared, obviously, within the bounds of sunshine, so there's not a perception that we're having any conversations outside of a formalized meeting. We will rotate it around. The Pinellas committees will not meet until the middle of January, and their
That's
board
okay.
info will meet in the end of January. Is there a sense from this committee when you would like to reconvene?
Probably after that meeting,
Okay, so
towards the end of January.
Okay.
Like this meeting is, regular schedule.
and not when Tampa Bay Water is meeting.
Yes, correct.
Was this first draft purely a product of our staff, or did it come from PSTA?
So we had been working with our friends at Pinellas on the
Okay.
content for it. I believe they had charged their GC with working on some level of what a structure would look like. So they were working on structure and discussing with their board. We had listed the areas of collaboration. And a lot of this didn't come from pre-existing agreements. So we have several interlocals that HART has entered into, which have had this maintenance of record section that we are striking. It's just something which has been included historically, but clearly it is redundant because we are very transparent and there's nothing that we produce which is not sunshineable anyhow.
I think the
There's
most
a business
important
need.
thing is why the points are in this agreement. What information do you have to back it up? So
Yes, ma'am.
that's always good.
Comments to who? To David or to Jeff?
10 comments to Catherine. She'll send them to
Perfect.
David.
We will.
We use Catherine as our main point.
She's far better organized. Just kidding.
Women are more detailed. Okay. Caesar. We went to the meat of the meeting first, so we're going to go to the fun stuff now, setting our legislative, state and federal legislative priorities. So, welcome.
Yes, good morning, board, and just wanted to kind of give a little bit of a brief overview of some of the feedback that we've been hearing back from some of our partners, as well as been working with the chair and trying to solidify what will be some of our policy objectives, as well as working with the advocacy group. And I think that we have a pretty good grasp as to what our policy objectives will look like in the state legislature. I think the first one is the airporter, something that we're very excited about, working with the airport, which would tie our downtown Tampa, the airport, downtown St. Petersburg, and also Carillon. Sorry, I'm from Brooklyn, and sometimes I mispronounce words. So that would be our first and foremost policy objectives moving forward with the airport. If this committee sees that they would agree with that. Also, we want to continue to support our hyperlink project, so our first and last mile solutions project. What would that look like with a possible expansion down the line? We would also continue to advocate for CNG rebate program. We are the leading agency which invests in CNG bridge technology in the state of Florida. Last year, it was expanded, the program, so we would continue to be supportive so that program could continue to exist. Also, we will be the leading agency in autonomous vehicle deployment with our autonomous vehicle corridor in downtown Tampa. So with that being said, we will also be supportive of any language which would demonstrate the ease and deployment of autonomous vehicle technology in the state of Florida, since we are pioneers in deploying that technology within our transportation infrastructure. So these are some of the objectives that are set before us. I'm looking forward to feedback and a possible discussion, and to hear any other ideas before we can solidify this, and I guess this goes before the board.
Great, thank you very much. Comments from board members? That was a very good list. The airporter obviously is gaining a lot of traction, especially in the legislature. Our delegation members really have received this very well and feel it's a great project. And hyperlink, very, very good. So CNG, of course, is, it's just, that's an easy one. And the Metro Rapid, go for it. We got to keep trying. And I think with hyperlink, that also needs to be requested from the county commission as we do our 2-year budget.
I'd love to hear that.
In the outlying areas, such as West Chase and South County. I look at the cost of it, and it's not a high-cost project. And the great thing is, it will help us work to increase ridership. That is so important.
To your point, last week I spoke with Sam Sudman from Sun City Center, and he is trying to coordinate a lunch meeting as early as 2 weeks from now, if not 3 weeks. We've been working very closely with their leadership, as it were, 4 or 5 years, and trying to figure out what solutions make sense. And it has never been the big bus. So they were very interested in the idea of hyperlink. We will see if we can get a vehicle down there and start seeing what we can design based on that hyperlink platform, which is very responsive for South County. But they were very interested.
Well, I definitely think we can use some of our transportation dollars that we're allocating on January 5th to hyperlink. I think that's a really good thing to do. In the school student voucher program, as we all know, Commissioner Beckner brought this to us a couple of years ago, and I think that's only going to grow over the years. So it's great. Yes,
Yeah, just a
Director
question on
Jaresh.
this, because I do remember, I was wondering if it was that program, but it says this is the is this the school district or the sheriff's department?
It would be the school district.
School district, okay.
So these are also conversations.
Funny.
Yeah.
Sheriff's Office is HCSO.
Oh, SO, okay, that's where I was like, I don't know, what, for a minute I was thinking sheriff, so I was kind of taken for a loop, okay.
Yeah, so some of the conversations we had, and I had the conversation with the chair, is that there's a possibility now with the school district that they may be doing some kind of ask, legislative objective, to continue a similar program that we have with Staycation, especially a lot of the news that is coming out that they're no longer doing these courtesy rides.
Right.
That is still something that I'm working, that I'm discussing with their government relations personnel, Connie Melito, and their chair, Cindy Stewart. So there's nothing solidified as of yet, But if that is something that they see that they would want to make one of their policy objectives, we would be 100% supportive, I would think.
So they would supply the vouchers to the students, and that way they'd be able to eliminate some of the service that they're currently providing?
Correct.
Okay. And I think it's SDHC. I think that's why I got thrown for the loop. I think it's School District of Hillsborough County.
But once again, I just want to reiterate
Yeah.
that this isn't set in stone. These are conversations we're having. However, if this is something that they would want to pursue, then we would be supportive if the board seems so.
Yeah, I'm supportive of the projects on the list. As far as the Metro Rapid, PD&E, as we're doing our TDP update, how are those kind of going to fare in that whole process? I know it's just begun, but any things you want to add? Or?
Yeah, and that is an excellent question. In fact, I'm going to say in previous years, the MPO has included this as the next step to go ahead and do a PD&E. It's tied to our TDP, but also right now to the Regional Premium Transit Plan. And you will hear us start using plan because, we're at the point that we've done all these studies, so it's pulling information together on those. Both of those will impact this, what corridors are identified, what kind of technologies are we looking at. The TDP is not just a 10-year forward of what makes sense, but also, as we have discussed a little, we're doing a zero-based budget this year, and we're taking this opportunity to refresh how we do business. Transit has changed, and the technologies are changing, and what we look forward to bringing you over the course of next year is something that, with the kickoff for October 1st, is a very different way to think about how we're getting service out there, and it will impact this corridor in a couple of different ways. So that's as much as I can say aside from I don't know, because until we dig into the process, it sounds terrible, but part of what we're doing right now is just having to stay really flexible on what makes sense for where. So we will include this in the list of things to keep you posted. But all of our Metro Rapid corridors are sort of in the hopper and making sure that this is the best use of the technology and it's the best way to meet the ridership that our first big Metro Rapid study was 2008. The world has changed.
Oh, yeah.
And so some of these things are pretty different.
Right.
And it'll be cool. It'll just be different.
So at the time when we came up with those studies, we were looking at ridership models and what made it. And so we chose the corridors based on the highest demand. And there was the demand to knit a lot of our higher riding routes together kind of in a
Yes, ma'am.
easier.
And every year when we do the annual TDP updates, staff does the refresh on the ridership. So when there's a request for ridership information, right now that would be 2016 census and MPO fueled data. So we're not looking back 8 years. We're looking at what exactly what the corridor looks like now.
At real time.
And if the candidate between downtown and out to the airport, regardless of how you define that corridor, there is a lot going on. The trick is to make sure all those things going on play into one cohesive system, that nobody's repeating anybody's work and nobody's being redundant.
Okay. Very good.
A couple points related to what you said, Director Jarosh, is I think the corridor from downtown to the airport may be shifting from Kennedy Boulevard to Cypress also. I don't know what DOT is working on, and that I'm sure in the premium transit plan. So I guess it could, I think between what we're doing in the TDP, the premium transit study,
There's a lot in the hopper.
there is a lot in the hopper that's going to tell us, but I think it can still move forward with this request. I doubt we may.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Not get. Might as well just keep trying. I think you could always change the corridor as you move along. And the other thing is school system. Of course, they have the new policy. Within 2 miles, they have stopped busing the children. That has grave concerns for me as far as transportation. Increase of cars on the roads, the queuing, everything. So I do think the vouchers could really help in this. I think they're being very proactive at the school system to move this forward. So I'm very happy to see that. And really, these kids getting on that we're getting on school buses that might ride a HART bus are our future transit riders.
Definitely are.
So we're training them, we're getting them used to it, we're increasing our ridership. I think it's all good stuff. So can I have a motion to approve our legislative priority list to go to the full board?
Move it.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Like sign opposed? Show that passed. Okay, Caesar?
And just last thing, I just wanted to give a brief update on our existing federal advocacy right now. So our team is still advocating for us. We are pursuing an autonomous vehicle pilot designation from USDOT. Still with this current administration, we are working with THEA, the City of Tampa, the Innovation Alliance, and Qatar on receiving this designation. And what does the designation do? It showcases that we are, once again, pioneers and looking for the deployment of this technology in this region. So that is an application that we are currently working on and we will be submitting on the 19th. So federal team and I are still advocating relentlessly until the next administration comes in and we can move forward with federal policy objectives for FY17. So still not done with FY16 on the federal side, but it's coming to a close.
Okay. So what you'd like from us today is to approve the rankings and to suggest, what's the action you want us to take today?
For the federal, I guess that's a separate conversation that I'm also going to call on Director of Procurement up here for to discuss the firms. What I was talking about is just currently a federal policy objective that we're currently going for.
Okay.
But now we can segue into the next portion of the agenda, and that is a discussion on the federal advocacy team, which their contract is up, and they will be presenting to the full board. So with that, I'd like to call Director of Procurement.
Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Al Burns, Director of Procurement and Contracts Administration for HART. In your package, you should have a committee discussion item to review scoring sheets for the Federal Legislative Consultant Services contract and advance the offers to the full Board of Directors for presentation. If you remember, Madam Chair, in late July, I presented the Federal State Consultant Services presentation to committee. And subsequent to that, it went to board where it was decided that we would exercise the option for the state legislative consultant, the advocacy group, and go out for competition for federal legislative services. The background here is bulletized. This is a set of deliverables and goals that we wanted the federal legislative consultant to consider inside of his proposals. And what today I would like to do is present to you the procurement considerations or the ranking after the evaluation team is scored. On September 26th, our RFP for Federal Legislative Consultant Services was issued in compliance with HART procurement policies. The solicitation was posted on the HART website and demand website with direct notices sent to registered vendors. The solicitation was accessed from HART's website by 18 firms or individuals. The term of the contract shall be for 18 months from award of the contract with 2 one-year options not to exceed 2 years and 18 months. On October 21st, 3 proposals were received for the federal legislative consultants. An evaluation selection committee consisting of Cesar Hernandez from HART, Lena Pettit from HART, Ryan Padmitra from Tampa Bay Partnership, Gina Davis from Tampa International Airport, and Wendy Brill, Tampa Chamber of Commerce, scored the 3 proposals received. I do want to add a comment to that. The evaluation team from the outside, they helped tremendously and they brought a lot of value to the process. Review factors were weighted 700 points for technical and 300 points for pricing. Technical factors included qualifications of the firm, 300 points, qualifications of the staff, 100 points, and work plan, 300 points. And the ranking is as follows. Holland and Knight, number 1. Potomac Partners, D.C., number 2. McAllister and Quinn, ranked number 3. I'd like to inform you, Madam Chair, that I sent a letter to all 3 offerors And in that letter it read, "My name is Al Burns, Director of Procurement and Contract Administration for HART. I'm sending this letter to keep you informed of our progress as it pertains to the legislative services procurement. On December 19th, I will take discussion of the aforementioned to the Legislative Strategic Planning Committee. You are not expected to attend this meeting. The next Board of Directors meeting will be January 9th, 2017, at which time you will be making presentations to the board members. After the committee meeting on December 19th, I will send additional correspondence with information that the committee has recommended. This letter is being sent to you so you can prepare your travel arrangements. However, I caution you not to make any concrete arrangements until you hear back from my office by December 20th of this year. Al Burns." Once again, the evaluation committee, they did an outstanding job. Everything is transparent, like we do here at HART. And once again, just to go over the rankings for your pleasure, there's Holland and Knight, number 1. Potomac Partners, DC, number 2. McAllister and Quinn, number 3. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
Thank you, Al. Thank you. You always do a great, thorough job, so appreciate all your information. Comments from, yes, Director
Thank you,
McLean.
Madam Chair. Hey, Al, question for you. On your evaluation committee, do any of them have business dealings with any of these organizations?
Excellent question, sir. Part of the solicitation or the procurement process for request for proposal is that all evaluation team members have to sign a confidentiality statement and no conflict of interest. There was no conflict of interest noted, real or apparent.
Okay, so Tampa International does not deal with Holland and Knight that you know
of? I don't know the answer to that question off the top of my head, but I can find that out, sir.
I asked that question for a reason. I mean, just to make sure there's no bias going into it.
Sure.
The other comment I'll make is we clearly have a winner here. And I was going to ask, do we need to have the presentations on the 9th of January?
It's the pleasure of
I mean, we can make the recommendation to the board without the presentations. Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you. We do have a winner. Yes. Did you want to make a comment?
No, you are free to do that. My recollection is there were 2 procurement areas in which the board wanted to be intimately involved. One was general counsel,
Right.
and the other was lobbyists. So I think they might want to hear from the folks. I don't know whether they took any action that requires that to happen, but I do think that was the preference of the board.
Sure. Usually the representatives do come to the meeting where we're approving their agreement or contract. So if they do come, obviously we'll let them speak. Yes, Director George?
Yeah, how did the price line up with what we've paid in the past?
I have that information.
Okay.
That backpack looks like it's got a
Yeah.
lot of information in it, Al.
I believe we were like 180,000 over a 2-year for our last, if I'm remembering correctly.
You're absolutely correct, ma'am. It was 2-year for $180,000 at a fixed monthly fee of $7,500 a month. I don't have the fee schedule in front of me. I apologize. I probably do. I'm sorry. But this time it is proposed at $327,000.
Wow.
Number 2 came in at $348,000, and number 3 came in at $420,000.
You're kidding. What did we add requirements?
I believe we better defined our requirements than what we did in years past, thanks to Caesar's leadership on this. However, one of the things that procurement is tasked to do is to make sure that the pricing is fair and reasonable. Before going out for solicitation, I called our partners across the Bay, PSTA, JTA, and a couple transit agencies. And believe it or not, if my recollection recalls, all of those transit agencies actually pay a higher fee for their legislative consultant. Now, there's different reasons why different agencies pay more. I'm sorry.
Were we pricing out just the 2-year base or with options? The 320
The
represents
three,
what
yeah, I
term?
think, isn't that the 2 years?
So is it 2 years with a 1-year option, 2 years with a 2-year option, and we can divide backward?
I believe the 327 is for all 4 years, but I have to double check before I say that.
Yeah, I think it's not as dramatic
Okay.
as we think it
I was going to
is.
say, that's more than a doubling. I'm
I know.
having a heart attack here.
I remember when we first approved this, I had the same question, and it was, they reminded me it was
If-
over several years.
If we could get the total number by year, that would, like 90,000 years what we were paying, and this is what we all, that, because I get,
Yeah, and so when
Let's
we
dumb it down.
have this to approve at our board meeting, Al, could you just have the specific information about the cost?
Of course.
Thank
Okay?
you.
Great, thank you. Can I get a motion to approve to have this go to the board for final approval?
So moved.
so moved. Or second.
We have a motion. Oh,
Madam Chair, just for clarity's sake, do we want the offerors here to present, or is it just the number one?
oh no, just, we're going to recommend, actually, the motion is to approve the recommendation. Your recommendation to us is to approve the number one. Is that correct?
No, ma'am, my recommendation, I'll excuse me, I'm sorry, not no, ma'am, but I think clarity. At the conclusion of the discussion of the Legislative and Strategic Planning Committee, the formal recommendation for the full HART Board of Directors, all 3 offerors will provide presentations at the January 9th, 2017 regular board meeting.
Oh, Director Jacob.
If I may, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
No,
I think that it's based on certainly my recollection of the discussion in the
Yes.
board meeting. I think it would be very important to have all 3
Yes.
respondents do a presentation at that meeting. I think this was something that was clearly of great interest to the rest of the board at the time we discussed it previously. So I think that would be the proper way to do it.
You mean all 3 or just the number one? Because the committee ranked someone as number one. Are we saying we may not go with the approval?
Given the doubt on the price, I'm actually not,
Well, the
ready.
others are higher, a lot higher.
Price, yeah.
So, I mean, it can't be a price situation.
well, I believe Holland and Knight was ranked at 900, 300, so they have the lowest price, right?
Yes, they did.
Okay.
Higher ranking, lower price.
Higher
yeah,
ranking,
okay.
lower price.
Okay, so, but 327, if it's compared to the 180, you know, I don't know, I would have a lot more confidence knowing that it hasn't gone up, doubling. You know, so I would feel comfortable advancing the discussion to the board, the full board, and have the 3 presentations, because at that point, the board then makes the decision. I mean, that's why we're bringing them all 3 up there.
Okay. Yeah,
Is that,
I think that's fine.
is that what we're looking to
Historically,
do?
the full board has had the conversation.
Yes.
As with any action item,
Yeah.
the committee recommendation, the board always has the right to move from there. But historically, the board has felt very strongly about having all the offerors present.
Yeah. I would
And
feel bad
They
if
don't
we,
bill us for the time.
I
So
would
there's
feel
no-
bad if we made a recommendation and then had the other 2 come along, and would they really show if the committee already made a recommendation?
Well, they're going to know from our minutes that they're not being ranked number one, so they may or
Packet-
probably
this packet
won't
is
show.
online.
I mean, that's usually what happens, but they may show.
If I could just clarify that, I think the motion currently is to accept staff's recommendation to invite all 3 offerors to
Yes.
present. Some may decline.
Yeah.
They'll know what the circumstances are, and then the board will make a final decision.
That is the motion, absolutely.
Just a comment. Although we have the rankings here, we're not confined as a board to these rankings.
Oh, never.
Yeah.
No,
so
it's
I
from
think
the
it would be
committee.
prudent to have everybody to come.
Right.
Could we possibly, in the board packet, get a little more detail? I think typically I believe I've seen that type of detail in the past. So maybe price information. I don't know that we need to have all the technical information, but I think the price would be
Yeah,
helpful.
I think they want to know what the annual cost is going to be, what the total contract cost is going to be, what the hourly fee is going to be. So just, it's spelled out by the presenter. So we have that information in front of us.
Director Jerome, I apologize for not having that.
No, that's
Normally
okay.
I have it in the packet, and I'll make sure.
Not a problem.
Director Jacob?
And one more question, Al. In the background information you provided us, there was a list of services, but with your RFP that went out, or in your assessment, is there measurable metrics that are expected once the contract is signed, or when these firms respond? In other words, what expectations do we have beyond just what they're going to provide services? I mean, if we're going to be paying this level, certainly in my world, we have measurable metrics in which we're expected to perform, and so is that something that we typically do? Should we do it? I mean, it's just, I don't know the answer, but it's a question.
Excellent question, Director Jacob. In the solicitation, there is part of the proposal was to submit a work. And in exhibit, what we call Exhibit D, solicitation, which is special provisions, it outlines when the different deliverables are supposed to be delivered. For example, you're supposed to have a work plan presented to Mr. Hernandez within 2 weeks after contract or after contract execution. Caesar at that time will review the work plan, make sure that it lines up to the actual scope of work or the statement of work, and from there they go forward and move forward. But there are deliverables. There's also monthly deliverables, I think monthly and quarterly deliverables written within inside the scope of work as well.
Okay, thank you.
Sounds good, Al. So we do have a motion on the floor and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Like, sign, opposed? Show that pass. Thank you all. Thank you both for your presentations. It's very good. Good information, and we'll be taking these items to the board meeting, the priorities and the federal legislative contract, and then just to kind of sum up, and then the work in progress document on the agreement will come back to us at our next meeting.
You're 2 minutes early.
Oh, and I'm 2 minutes, yay! So, thank you all for coming. Again, I hope you all have a great, healthy, happy, joyful holiday season, very blessed with your families. And with that, if there are no other discussion items, we stand adjourned.
Outstanding. Good, thank you.